Two police officers stepped forward to the polished crowd, their voices sharp against a gentle murmur of champagne and laughter. A woman stood alone near the stage, her coat faded, her shoes dull with age. "Ma'am, you need to leave," one officer ordered. She clutched a small photo to her chest, silent. Then from the back row, 8 men in dark suits rose together, and the entire room froze. The Riverside Grand Ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers. Men in suits traded jokes over wine. Women in designer gowns smiled for photos beside the city's elite. It was the annual military honors ceremony, a place of medals, speeches, and reputation. But as the doors opened, a woman entered who didn't belong in this polished world. Her coat was worn, her hands rough. She looked lost, yet something in her eyes spoke a quiet strength. Officer Kane noticed her first. "Excuse me, ma'am, this area is for invited guests only," he said, stepping closer. His partner, Brooks, hovered nearby, scanning her up and down. The woman's voice trembled. "My son, he's receiving an honor today." She held out a crumpled invitation, edges soft from being held too tightly. Kane barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "Ma'am, this isn't valid. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her face fell. "Please," she whispered. "I'm his mother." The officers exchanged a look of disbelief. The younger one snatched the paper, tore it in half, and tossed it aside. Gasps rippled to the nearby guests, but no one stepped forward. Kane leaned in, his voice low. "Let's not make a scene." He reached for her arm, and that's when it happened. A single voice broke the silence. Cold, commanding. "Take your hands off her." The sound cut through the ballroom like steel. The officers turned. From the back row, 8 men in dark suits stood up in unison. Their posture wasn't civilian. It was military. Every movement crisp, deliberate, and full of purpose. The crowd turned to stare as the men began walking forward, the air thick with tension. The lead man stopped in front of the officers. "Do you know who this woman is?" he asked quietly. Neither cop answered. The woman's hands shook. "My name is Cheryl Mason," she said softly. "My son, Sergeant Jake Mason, died serving this country." The room went still. The lead man nodded once, and he saved every one of us. Whispers rippled through the hall. Cameras lowered. The 8 men Marines stood shoulder to shoulder beside Cheryl. The lead Marine, his jaw tight with emotion, continued. "6 months ago, we were ambushed in Afghanistan. Outnumbered. Trapped. Your son didn't hesitate. He drew enemy fire so we could escape. 12 of us made it home because of him." Cheryl covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. The officers stepped back, shame flooding their faces. The elegant crowd that had once stared at her with disdain now looked on in silent reverence. The same hands that had held champagne flutes now hung motionless, unsure where to look. Captain Reed, the senior Marine, took a step forward. "Mrs. Mason was invited here to receive her son's Medal of Honor," he said firmly. "And anyone who thinks she doesn't belong here doesn't understand what honor truly means." His words echoed through the hall. Even the chandeliers seemed to shimmer differently now, less for decoration, more like witnesses. The host of the event, a businessman named Tyler Blackwood, rose awkwardly. I didn't know," he stammered. "I thought—" Captain Reed turned sharply. "You thought wrong." Then, softer, "But you can still make it right." The lights dimmed. The music stopped. The 8 Marines stood behind Cheryl as the Medal of Honor box was carried to the stage. Captain Reed lifted the medal, its blue ribbon glowing under the light, and placed it around her neck. The room held its breath. Cheryl whispered, "He was just my boy, my Jake." For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the Marines raised their hands in a perfect salute. The sound of applause followed, slow at first, then thunderous. People rose to their feet. The same crowd that had once looked down on her now stood united in respect. Tyler stepped forward again, tears in his eyes. "Mrs. Mason," he said, "I'll make sure your son's name is never forgotten. We'll start a scholarship in his honor, for every child of a fallen hero." Cheryl nodded, her voice trembling but strong. "That's what Jake would have wanted." The applause swelled again, echoing off marble walls, carrying the weight of gratitude, redemption, and sacrifice. The Marines formed an honor guard around her as she walked out, head held high, the metal gleaming against her chest. The narrator's voice fades in over-soft music. Sometimes the strongest hearts wear the simplest clothes. Sometimes the greatest heroes come from the quietest homes. And sometimes honor walks into a room wearing worn-out shoes and teaches everyone what true courage looks like.